In section 5, we're going to graph lines, linear equations, and also linear inequalities without a table. Linear equations are what we've been looking at so far, which is a straightforward line. Inequalities means we're going to have greater than or less than, or solid or dashed lines greater than, less than, or equal to. So let's zoom in on this first problem here. We are asked to graph this without a table, and we're going to use our knowledge of slope and y-intercept in order to do that. As I look at this line, I have a slope, and you might even want to write this on your own page. Circle that number and write slope, and you also have a y-intercept. So I have a slope and a y-intercept. So I'm going to actually start with my y-intercept. It tells me how far up and down I should go on the y-axis. So in this case it says y-intercept of 5. I'm going to put a dot right there at 5. My slope tells me how much I need to change from that. I see that it's a negative slope, which means as I go forward, this line is going to go down. And I see that my change in y up on top, my change in y is 3. So I'm going down 3. So I'm going to be somewhere across from 2. And then I go over 2. So I go down 3 and over 2. And when I do that, it gives me this point right here. That's all I need to do, because in order to define a line, all you need is 2 points. 2 points will define an entire line. So if I graph that right now, I am done. So to graph it when it's written in slope-intercept form, I simply plot my y-intercept and then count out my slope, and I am done. Let's try another example here. Y equals negative 8x plus 3. First thing I want to do is get my y-intercept of 3, and I'm going to plot that right there at 3 on the y-axis. Then I'm going to look at my slope, and I have a slope of negative 8, and although it's not written there, I'm going to put that over 1 just to help me remember it's negative 8 over 1, which means as I go forward, my slope is going down. The negative tells me that, and the 8 over 1 is how much. So the 8 is the change in the y. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way down to negative 5. I'm going to go over only 1, which means my slope is going to be very steep and very negative. So if I were to sketch this line here, it's a little bit hard to do. It would look something like that. And I can erase my little triangle on the side. So that would be the line y equals negative 8x plus 3, and we are done with that one now. Down in this lower section it says sketch the graph of the linear inequality. We are going to do it exactly as if it was a line to start out with, and then we will adjust to talk about the inequality part of it. So I have a y-intercept of positive 4. Immediately going to graph that at the y equals 4. I have a slope of positive 1/2. That means that is a gradually up slope. So as I go over, I'm going to be going up. The 1 on top means I have a change in y of 1, a change in x of 2. So I go up 1 over 2. And I'm going to go ahead and lightly sketch in my line. So there's my line. The last part I need to do is looking at the inequality part of it, this part right here. We have a few options. It can be greater than or bigger than, or it can be less than, which is smaller than. We look at where is y in relation to all of this. If y is bigger, if you think of this almost as the alligator's mouth, and it is eating the y is bigger, then the y value is going to be shading bigger than this line. So you shade above the line, and that's how you know where to shade. If it was y is less than, you would shade below. The other part is whether you go solid or dashed. If you see the little line under it right here, you are going to have a solid line. If you didn't, if it was something like y is just simply greater than 1/2 x plus 4, then it would be a dashed line that you would be drawing. So this line that I drew as solid, you would draw that as dashed if you didn't have that little line underneath. So this one, we are done. Since it is solid, we shade above, and so forth. If you think you're going to forget some of those things, you might want to, on the very bottom of the page, write yourself some notes. Something like y is greater than, or y is greater than or equal to, you would write above. Y is less than or equal to, or just y is less than, you would shade below. You might want to write shade below. Unlike a line where the solution is anything that falls on that line, with an inequality it's anything on that line or, in this case, above. If we go over to number 18, we see that we have a slope that is missing. Usually the slope is written right here next to x, and there's nothing there. When you don't see anything present, really there is a 1 next to that x that you cannot see. There is a 1. And it might even be more clear to write it as 1 over 1 next to that x. And the reason that helps you is that makes it a little easier to see the slope. Then you have your y-intercept, which in this case is -2. So I'm going to immediately plot that y-intercept of -2. I'm going to count out my slope. I see that it's positive, so as I go over, I'm going to be going up. I'm going to count out my slope, and it's simply 1 over 1 up. So it's a pretty straightforward slope. And I'm going to graph then my line right there. I see that it is in fact a solid line. I don't need to go back and make that dashed because of the little line underneath right there. So it is solid. And it says y is less than. Y is the smaller thing. So I'm going to shade below that line. And that is how you graph, for section 5, linear equations and inequalities from slope-intercept form.